Calling the oversight hearing to order. We are in the midst of a couple votes. One just started, and we will have another one when this one completes. So it's a little bit disruptive here this morning or this afternoon, but we're going to make do because we've got a lot to talk about, and it's the business of the committee to just proceed. Today, we're here to learn more about the U.S. Department of Education programs that work to meet the trust responsibility that the federal government has to our Native students in elementary, secondary, and post-secondary education. We've spent a lot of time in this committee talking about the Bureau of Indian Education, and that's for good reason. We're going to continue to do so. But we really can't not lose sight of the fact that more than 90% of Native students across our country attend public schools. And the government fulfills its trust responsibility to those students through programs at the Department of Education, in addition to programs at the Interior, at USDA, and HHS. Title VI of the Indian Education Formula Grants Program at DOE represents a significant federal investment in American Indian and Alaska Native students and is a cornerstone of federal Indian education policy. This program helps public schools provide additional tutoring, mentoring, and social support to Native kids who need it so that they can graduate on time. Programs like the Native American Language Grants or the Alaska Native Education Program, which we call ANEP or ANE, connect students to culture to keep them motivated and engaged in learning. And then funding from Title III of the Higher Education Act supports Native American post-secondary educational institutions that allow Native students to remain in their communities, raise their kids, and take care of their families, all while earning certificates and degrees that will help them be better prepared leaders, fill gaps in the workforce, and grow the local economy. These funding streams and many others at the Department of Education are especially critical in fulfilling the federal trust responsibility. And this is particularly important to me because we don't have Bureau of Indian Education, BIE schools in my state of Alaska. And this Department of Ed money has flexibilities associated with it that allows tribes, Native organizations, parents, communities, and families input into the development and the delivery of Indian education programs. Funding like ANEP, for example, has allowed the growth of a number of educational options for kids in my state by funding after-school, summer, and public tribal charter school opportunities. Given the major role that the Department of Ed funding plays in educating the next generation of Native students, I have heard, and I know many of my colleagues have heard, questions and concerns about recent proposals to alter or dismantle the U.S. Department of Education, as well as the recent executive orders calling for federal agency rifts and reorganization plans. So we're here today to better understand the Indian education programs at the Department of Education, how they impact Native students' families, and the schools across our states, and really why they must continue and not be negatively impacted by these reductions in force and the reorganization plans. We need to make progress on the ground, and we owe it to our Native kids across the country. So the insights, the experiences, the feedback provided by witnesses at today's hearing will also help us chart our path forward on federal education programs. So thank you to all of you who've joined us today. I know it's never easy to make the long slog all the way back to Washington, D.C., but I appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you. When the vice chair of the committee arrives, he will have an opportunity to make an opening statement. But in the interest of time, what I'd like to do is just begin the proceedings within the committee. We will go in order from my left to right, beginning with Mr. Jason Dropik, who is the Executive Director of the National Indian Education Association here in Washington, D.C. He'll be followed by Sidna Yellowfish, the Director of Indian Education at Edmond Public Schools. You've come to us from Edmond, Oklahoma, so welcome. Next, we have my friend and a friend of the committee's, Dr. Rosita Worrell. She is president of the Sealaska Heritage Institute, and she has joined us from Juneau, Alaska. Thank you, Rosita. And Ms. Nicole Russell is the Executive Director of National Association of Federally Impacted Schools, also here in Washington, D.C. And then rounding out the panel is Ms. Anawake Rose, who is the President and the CEO of the American Indian Higher Education Consortium, just across the river in Alexandria, Virginia. I would remind everyone on the panel that we do have your full written testimony. It will become part of the official records, so I'd invite you to keep your oral testimony here today to less than 5 minutes so that we've got plenty of time for questions and your responses following. So Mr. Dropik, we will begin with you, and then again, as Senator Schatz comes, we might interrupt the progression of the panel for his opening statements, but please proceed.